Hi everybody, Giselle Grenier here from artplace.ca. In this video, we're going to work on our next project for our book of backgrounds, and this one is going to involve some collaging of book paper, staining, and scraping layers of paints using matte medium to repel the paint. So a whole bunch of stuff. These ones are getting a little bit more complicated, so it is going to be a little bit longer. But I'm sure it's going to be a fun one for you to try. And I'm going to be using the Strathmore Mixed Media Vellum Surface paper. It's the 400 series. This is the Wind Power, and you can get information about the Wind Power paper on the Strathmore website. So this is the 11 by 14. So what I did is in my cutter, I made a cut at 8.5. So it was 8.5 by 11. Then I have this extra piece, which I'm going to be using as a background as well, because the whole way that I'm binding this book is with different sizes of paper. So you're not restricted to getting something that's already bound. And to save time, I'm gonna gesso these now. I'm just using my number 8 Bristol Bright, and I'm scrubbing the gesso. And if you find yourself with wanting to do something but you're not sure, gesso some paper, because you can get inspired by just looking at the patterns of the brush strokes. That sometimes will get some creativity going as well. If you don't have a brush that you can use a palette knife. And you can, when I say a brush that you can use, I mean a larger brush. You can scrape the gesso on with a palette knife, or we all have some type of plastic, whether it's a health card or cards from department stores, and all this other stuff. So because this one here, when I got it, it's not loadable again. So this is a great way you can scrape the gesso on. This gives you a much finer surface, and I'm using this technique for this particular one because we're going to be collaging. And you don't have to gesso the paper first. I'm doing it because I don't know what I'm going to be putting on the other side, and I don't want any of that paint to transfer through into this one. But if it happens, it happens. The book of background is all about experimenting. There are no steadfast rules. So I've got a good coating on there, so I'm going to let that dry, and while that dries I'm going to cap everything, and we'll come back in a few minutes. So this is dried, and what I also did is I took a bit of a break, and I also did the other side. That way it's ready for the next project. So for some collage material, you can find book paper anywhere. Take a newspaper, you can go to places like Value Village or Goodwill, wherever. Actually, Goodwill I don't think is around anymore. Consignment places and discount places and stuff like that, and you can get these old things. And Joe's mom gave this to me, and this is from 1982. This is the Spectator. It looks very different now as a formal newspaper, and all I'm looking for is some text, and I need something large enough, so this works out pretty well. And I'm saving this for something special. What's this one? Oh, vacuum cleaner. Oh, that's kind of nice. I like that. Let me just take that off. I'll take that. And quickly go through, and I'm looking for something specific. Just something that's going to fill the entire page. That might be a bit dark, but that would be really nice. Where does that go? Oh, it's like this page was made for this idea. It's going to be a bit dark though, so I'm going to leave that. Okay, so I'm just going to stick with... Oh, World Dolphin? Nope, not my thing. So I'm going to stick with this one. And... so what I'm going to do is I'm going to collage it, the whole piece. And if you've got, you know, any other material you want to use, go ahead. It's nice if it's book paper for this particular technique. It's kind of cool. So make sure that it goes right over the edges. We want to make sure we've got a nice edge to it. And then we'll just trim it off. We're going to be using matte medium. Actually, no, I lied. I'm going to use decoupage. This is for paper. Oh no. Make sure you clean the mouth of the bottle every time you use it. Just by doing that. I always forget. This stuff here is so amazing. It holds the paper so well. If you get it on your fingers though, it is going to be a bugger to get off. And normally I would use like a little glue brush for this. It's going to take forever, so I'm going to use... I hate using my good brushes for this. I'm going to use my number one brush for that. And I rinse this out when I'm done using it. So I'm going to apply the decoupage medium over the entire thing. I'm applying a good amount. Now this will take some drying time. And you don't really want to use a heat gun on this because you want if you're just mucking around, then yeah, you can use a heat gun. I would prefer not to for this much coverage. Make sure you've got all the edges. And this is where the craft mat really, actually this is a cooking mat from Cucina. Alright, so we're going to do that. If I lay this down and I position it wrong, I'm going to be moving that around. So what I can do is clean all this up first, because you don't want your paper to stick. Backside. And right there. I wanted to make sure I had enough paper around the edges to really be able to trim. I'm going to use that same plastic card to just fuse the paper to the mixed media paper. This gets rid of any air bubbles. And now that the decoupage medium is getting inside the paper, it's starting to become a bit more transparent, which is fine. If you're using tissue paper, you're going to have to be more delicate, more careful because it's delicate. And don't scrimp on this step, because if it's not glued down properly, it's just going to peel off. And especially if you're doing this, if it's a practice run, that's fine. But if you're doing this as a gift or something, then you don't want it to come apart. So I could actually, what I may do is when the project is done, I'll do this because this will just take extra drying time. But you can actually just fold it. It'll just add additional interest to the other side. It'll just add extra interest. So that's what you're looking for. Okay, so this I'm going to let dry for, this I'm thinking maybe about 15 minutes. And then I'll fuse that down as well. And then when we come back, we're going to stain the paper. Then we're going to put another layer of matte medium on there to protect the areas that we don't want to cover with paint. And then we're going to use the card again, and we're going to be scraping some more paint on there just to create a really interesting effect. So I will see you in a few minutes. So it took about 15 minutes for that to dry, and I also flipped those over and kind of just glued those down. I tore it here, so I'm not going to worry about that too much. I can always put something else there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stain the paper. And when staining paper, you want to use something transparent. So I'm using transparent yellow iron oxide, one of my favorite colors. And if your paper is pure white, that would be even a better opportunity to try it. This actually has a really pretty glow to it. I don't know if you can really see that nice old aged paper look. I just want to age it some more. And oh, there's a lot of gunk in there. And let me just move these out of the way. I'm going to use palette paper because this piece is a little larger. I don't want to make a mess. I think it's time for me to get another bottle of this. And this you don't want to cheap out on. You want to use a good amount. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to dampen the paper first. And if your brush is too small, just use a mister bottle. I'm just trying to save time here. And you want to make the paper damp, not sopping wet. And the reason you want that is because when we stain the paper, if there's any dry spots, it's going to blotch, which is, really it's fine. See, here's an air bubble in here. So I didn't, yeah, there's an air bubble in here. So I didn't, even with doing this, it's still separated. Oh, well, I can actually where's, oh, it's on the other side. I was going to get a knife, and I'll have to get a nice knife and pierce it, then recollage it. So I'm going to take my transparent yellow iron oxide, and I'm just going to paint the entire piece. Which will really age it nicely. You can, if you don't have transparent yellow iron oxide, you can use, I say that so fast, transparent yellow iron oxide. You can use yellow ochre, but just really thin it down if you like thin it down with the matte medium, because yellow ochre is opaque by nature. And doing this, it actually lets the background show through, which is, it just adds more to the piece. Actually, this is the way this is. I don't think that's an air bubble. I think I just put too much water there, and the actual decoupage medium hadn't dried yet. A way to test is if your piece feels cold, there's still some moisture in it. There we go, look at that. So this we'll have to let dry as well. And then when we come back, I'm going to use the matte medium to protect some areas. Now I have to decide what area am I going to protect. When we scrape the paint, I'm going to be I think I'm going to put some of the blue down here over the vegetables. I think I want to have this protected, so when I scrape the red, I'll scrape it, but I'm not going to quite cover all of this stuff. So we'll have to see what happens. I'm thinking of a different idea now from what I originally started. And that's the whole thing when it comes to creating these backgrounds. You let the background kind of guide you into where you want to go. My idea, what I started out with, is not really where I want to take this now. Nothing's changed with the technique, but it's just how I'm going to do it. Yeah, so you can see all those wrinkles. So what I'll do is before off camera, I'll just take a pin and I'll just poke those out, and then I'll just push them down just a little bit more. Yeah, the decoupage medium hasn't dried yet, so learn from my mistake. Alrighty, so I will be back in about 10 minutes. Alright, so that's not 100% dry, but it's enough for what we want to do now. And I'm going to take some matte medium. And you can choose, I'm just going to stir this up. You can choose how you want to put that on. If you want to put it on with a brush or you want to scrape it on, doesn't matter. And I'm going to use my number 8 bristle brush, and I know that I want to cover this up, but I'm not going to put a complete even coating on stuff, so I'm just going to go like this. And we'll just see what happens. And what it's doing is it's creating a barrier layer. Just random. I think that's about it. I'm going to pick up some of the excess there. I am going to put more here. That's where that air bubble was. You could re-soak the paper with and put more decoupage medium on top. I don't have time to do that right now. But I did make note on a piece of paper, which I will attach to this, what to do next time. And now I'm going to do this with the heat gun, although it's pretty hot. This will dry transparent. I'm not going to do the whole, not going to do this till it's 100% dry. I'm just getting it started. Because I want to dry the top layer of the medium so it gets a hard crust on it, which is not really what you should be doing for, you know, if you want your piece to be museum quality. You need to let it dry naturally. But I want that ridge. I want that ridge. And I don't want any white flecks in there. That's paint from my hands. Okay, so now I'm going to let this dry, and I'm going to clean up my workspace, and then when we come back, I'm going to take cobalt teal hue and primary magenta, and I'm going to scrape some of that on, which will be quite interesting when it comes to the contrast of the yellow. All right, so we're back. We're going to see what happens. I'm not quite sure how this is going to turn out, so we'll see what happens. I'm going to take some cobalt teal hue and I put it into a little bit of a line. I'm going to turn this upside down. I'm going to take the card. You can also, you know, I'll use a palette knife because not everybody has an extra card. I'm just going to flatten out the palette knife in there, and I'm just going to scrape. And what's happening is that the ridges of that matte medium is grabbing the paint. And you don't want to have complete coverage. I don't like those lines there, so I'm going to spread that out. And I was wondering if that was going to turn a bit more blue. Or a bit more green. Okay, so if I use this brush here, it turns a bit more green because it's thinner. That's transparent, so it should be green. And I can take that and I can soften some edges. As well, I can take a baby wipe. Let's see what happens if I do this. If you want to take a baby wipe, and let's say I want to remove some area, and where the matte medium was, the paint will come up. See? So the matte medium repels the ink. So I'm going to do the same. Oh, let me just hit this quickly to dry that. I hate using the heat gun when we're in a heat wave. Oh, drives me crazy. Just trying to save some time. Drying time for stuff for me is my biggest bug. I hate wasting time waiting for stuff to dry. This is primary magenta. You can use any colors you want. And so I want to leave that word bellies open. I like stuff that's, I don't like stuff that's so even, like this, no. So I'll just kind of feather that out. Because there's matte medium there. Just get it really, really random. And you can see the brush strokes in here as well. There we go. And this gives you quite a bit of working time, which is nice. You can really play with it. Now if you were using a credit card, so you can put a little bit on there and start at the bottom, and then you can work your way up. This gives you a lot of coverage though, which I didn't really want to do because it's so big. So we'll take a fresh baby wipe, because that one already has enough on there, and I'll just pick and choose some areas. It only come up really easy where there was the matte medium. Where you didn't have the matte medium, it's not going to come up as easy. As well, don't over rub the paper because you'll tear it up. And we'll cover up that name. Lock Street. I don't even know if that place is still there anymore. There we go. And I'm going to bring some of that transparent yellow iron oxide right from the corner. And now when I'm overlapping with the blue, it's turning green. Ooh, now we're going to get into orange. So this is just another way that you can do a background. Keeping it thin, you get to see the scrapes from when we put the matte medium on. And when you do, if you are going to use a baby wipe to wipe it off, make sure you go to a fresh part, because all you're going to be doing is taking whatever color's on there and you're going to be putting it back onto the paper. I want to see those scratches. Mia is extremely barky today. I don't know what her problem is. So there we go. So that's finished. And like I said, you can use any colors you want. You can basically, you know, collage whatever you want, use whatever technique you want. Doesn't matter. Wipe out as much as you want. Doesn't matter. Yeah, still a little bit's coming off. Once it dries though, you gotta leave it. Here we are. So once this is fully dried, if I wanted to really protect this, I could put a coat of the ultra matte varnish on this, and that'll really seal this in. Or I could put another layer of this. Actually, that's what I'm going to do. I'll show you how to do that. let me just dry this very quickly. And what you want to do though is your paper, this has to be 100% dry. I just want to show you the technique. So all you're going to do is, using a very large brush that's blotted dry, you're going to take the decoupage medium and you're just going to apply it a nice thin layer and let that dry. Then you can apply another layer and let that dry. And the more layers you put on, the stronger it's going to be. So if you're using very, very thin paper, it'll just make it really, really strong. Okay, but this has to be 100% dry. Okay, so all you're going to do is just apply the decoupage medium like that. Dry, another layer, dry, and repeat until you've got the proper coverage. So that's it. So I'm thinking this now. So although I like everything, I'm not a fan of the red. I think the red could have chosen something not so purple. Yeah, this is PV19, so that's more on the purple side. But I kind of like the way that I was able to rub stuff out where the medium was. Made a mental note about making sure that stuff is 100% dry. So doing this, I would allow for a day in total for drying time. So, you know, between the different steps, you're going to have quite a bit of drying time in here. And that's what you have with anytime you do collage. That's why I don't do it very often, because I hate the drying time. All right, so that's it. So I would love to see what you've done. Share it with me, or better yet, share it in our private Facebook group. We like to feed off each other's ideas, see what everybody's been up to. And I'm off to do the next video. And until then, stay inspired.